Celebrate reaching double figures for the Old Spice Boys podcast. Our guest today is a footballer who was the cock of the walk along the King's Road in the early 1970s and played his football with a delightful, uninhibited swagger. Alan Hudson was born in Chelsea, and his boyhood dream was to play for Fulham, who turned him down. He signed for Chelsea and was a galvanising spirit at Stamford Bridge before becoming arguably the best piece of business Tony Waddington ever did as manager of Stoke City when he moved there for £240,000 in 1974. Waddington described his talents as the working man's ballet. I'm Neil Harmon.
And I'm John Richardson. Alan moved to Arsenal in 1976, then spent several years in the USA and returned to close his professional career in the Potteries. Shamefully, he only won 2 England caps and said in an article in the Daily Mail 6 weeks ago that he preferred his international career was expunged from the record books.
Alan, we're delighted to have you here as a guest with us, 2 old Spice Boys today. And I know the fans of Chelsea and Stoke, and probably further afield as well in Seattle maybe, will feel the same. Lovely to see you, and just give us an update on how you are. You told me a little earlier you've been suffering a bit from the flu just recently, so you're feeling a bit better, a bit chipper now, yeah?
Yeah, I had a bad bout of it, but I come in contact with someone that had COVID about 10 days ago, and a friend of mine in a bar, and I kind of caught the backlash of that, but I had the test and I'm okay. Yeah, I'm good considering I had the bad car accident, or 21 year ago, 22 year ago, and I somehow got through that, which was some kind of miracle. But I suffer every day with it. But it's I suppose playing against the likes of Leeds and all that in the early days stood you in good stead for that kind of stuff. Well, it certainly did, because I believe I've always been, I've always had a bit of a reputation for being, out and about and all that. But I put saving my life in with the car ordeal with down to my training. And on the day I got hit in 15th of December 97, I had probably the hardest training session of my life in the morning. I was 46 years of age, and really I was quite proud of what I did in the morning, but not knowing what was coming that day. I got hit that night, and I had 59 days in a coma and a year in hospital. But I do put my training and my career before that, playing against the likes of Leeds, they kept me in good stead.
Just finishing off on that horrific car accident, Alan, is it true you've had about 60 operations since then?
Roundabout something like that. I'm waiting on another one now, but I had this wonderful, unbelievable thing. I remember when I was laying in the hospital one night, my mother was by my bed, and she was nervous and all that, and I was quite excited, and she couldn't believe it. She said, "What's wrong with you?" I said, "I love going in the theatre. I just love going in the operating theatre." It was something different, and it was something that I knew, being as positive that I like to be, that I was going to come out the operating theatre a lot better than when I went in, and that was the way I looked at it, really. And I love the bright light. I love the bright lights, but and I love the going through. When they take you in there, and the only thing I have a problem is they can never get blood out of me. I've had so many operations that they can't get in my veins. Wow. But I loved my time in hospital. Before we get on to the football side of it, I must tell you that the year in hospital was and I've been writing about it this morning. I've said it to all the people I've ever met. It's the most rewarding year of my life. To see the other side and all the people that never come through, the young kids around us. All this, what they went through with the pandemic, clapping the NHS doesn't even go anywhere near it. The kids that looked after me, the nurses, the doctors, were just out of this world. If I'd have had treatment like that when I was playing football, I'd have still been playing now.
Yeah, because you did suffer from your, a hell of a lot of injuries, especially your old ankles. Is that, I mean, that can't all be down to Billy Bremner and Johnny Giles, but the way you played, you were a kind of a magnet for those who would look to stop you.
Well, strangely enough, I'm doing a show in Stoke on Friday night with Terry Conroy, who got the winning goal against us in the 72 League Cup final, and I'm doing a show with him, and he was just giving me a little background. He said, I've been looking your thing up before we do the show on Friday. He said, and you played 108 games, 110 games consecutive before missing one. And I said, yeah, I broke my leg at Derby. That was a night Bruce Riot kicked me from behind. It was an intentional tackle. He broke my leg. But I played 100 and something games on them grounds, on them surfaces, and on the bad ankle that kept me out of the World Cup in 1970. I still had the bad ankle all through my career, and yet I played on all different surfaces. And I played many a bad game on hard surface. I couldn't play on hard surfaces. I needed the pitches soft.
One of the most surprising things to me, Alan, in that excellent article you did with Jeff Powell, the former colleague of ours, is that you mentioned that Stoke was the happiest days of your career, because most people would obviously think it was Chelsea, but you actually came up with Stoke, didn't you?
Yeah, so I think I'm a little bit different from a lot of footballers. A lot of footballers I talk to are the majority, probably 99 times out of 100, they fall in love with football clubs. I fell in love with a manager. Right. I believe it's playing. I think football is like you play for a person. And I didn't really like the way I was playing at Chelsea. I didn't play anywhere near I did at Stoke, because I was learning the game, and I was a youngster in the team with Charlie Cook, Peter Osgood, Eddie McCready, Bonetti in goal, all world-class players. And I was the kind of the kid in the team. I was like the gopher, and I would do all the running, which is no problem for me. I loved it because we had a fantastic team and a fantastic spirit. But it wasn't until I got to Stoke City and Waddington that he put me into that role that I was brought up to play, the old inside forward, as I like to call the number. They call this role today number 10. It's not number 10. Number 10's the inside forward. Johnny Haynes, George Easton, all the great inside forwards were number 10.
What was it about Tony? Because when people talk about the great England managers, be it present or past, people tend to think Shanks and Clough and Paisley and Tony, and they were fantastic managers, of course. But people tend to overlook Tony and his talents and what he actually did achieve at Stoke. What was it about him as a manager that, in your mind, Alan, set him apart?
Well, because I loved him not just because of his football, but as a person. We liked all the same things. But I think, in a nutshell, Neil, is he did it at a club which was a little bit different from Shankly at Liverpool and Busby. Busby was his great friend at Manchester United because he was a Busby babe himself. It's a lot easier to get success at big clubs. Like what Brian Clough did at Derby, Nottingham Forest was incredible. Clubs like that, that's when you judge a manager. Mourinho today can scream about all the success he's had, but he's done it with massive clubs. I'd like to have seen him go to the Victoria Ground and do what Tony Waddington done. He pulled them out the second division and got them to the top of the league. While I was there, we were top of the league, and we should have won the league in 75. We were the best team, and I was told sometime later that what cost us, we had 4 broken legs that season out of first team squad of 15, 16 players. And when you get that happen to you, your luck's not in. But he was the most wonderful manager. I think his strength was, unlike many other managers, he never got involved with you from Monday to Friday. Dave Sexton used to worry too much about what happened if you was out on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Tony didn't care what you did as long as you came in fresh on a Saturday and you put yourself out for the supporters on Saturday. You turned it on Saturday, and that's all he cared about. And I knew that, and my standards were very high. I had a very bad spell at Chelsea before I left, and I had a very bad spell at Arsenal for injury, but that was for injury. But my standards at Stoke were for him, and we had I had a very special relationship with the Bootham end there. I mean, the old Victoria ground was a very special place as well.
Yeah.
Your Stoke side came very close to winning the First Division title, didn't it, Alan? Which
Absolutely,
would have been an amazing story.
Yeah, I mean, we really did have a terrific side. They had a good side when they beat us in '72, but then obviously I think we would have won the league if Gordon Banks hadn't have had the car accident the year before.
Right.
And lost his if he hadn't that Sunday morning gone out and had the car crash and lost his eye, we would have won the league in '75. Because we bought Shilton, and Shilton didn't really play anywhere near his best at Stoke. He had a bad time at Stoke, and we weren't really in love with Peter, and Peter wasn't really in love with us, to be quite honest. But with Banks in goal, I know how all the other players felt about Gordon, and he was a fantastic loss to that Stoke City. And what a lot of people don't understand as well, why Waddington was so good. He had Gordon Banks, Jeff Hurst, and George Eastham at the club.
Yeah,
they were three of the 1966 World Cup squad.
Yeah,
that was the kind of man he was. His insight and just raising the profile of Stoke City. I spoke to Dennis Mortimer the other day, well, a few weeks ago, who I played against years ago. And he said Aston Villa won the European Cup without one international in the side, which was quite extraordinary at Aston Villa.
Yeah.
And I said, well, when I was at Stoke, although I took over from George Eastham, Tony Waddington had 3 World Cup squad in his team.
Yeah.
So, but Tony was going in the right direction when the roof fell off, obviously. And they had to sell me and the great Jimmy Greenough.
Yeah, he must be the first player that has been sold to mend a stand.
Well, I was sold twice one to pay for the stand at Chelsea, and 2 to mend it at Stoke. Because that's why they sold Peter Osgood and me at Chelsea, because they couldn't finish that stand up. They run out of money, so we were the obvious 2 to get rid of. And I got to Stoke, and just as we were top of the league and going well, with the roof fell off, and they sold me Greenough to Manchester United and me to Arsenal. So I don't know. I might be a bit of a jinx. I don't know.
You're definitely unique. I can't imagine that anyone in football has ever been in that experience.
Well, I do, but I've always said that somebody follows me about, or something follows me about. I don't know what it is, but it's a little bit like waking up after the car accident, and you think, how can it be? How many people crossed the road that night? In London, millions and millions of people in Piccadilly Circus, and the car hits me in the back. But I believe it's quite an extraordinary life.
You've hinted that was deliberate, Alan. Is that true?
I believe. I believe. Yeah.
Not
because the reason I say that is because the police, after I came down off the morphine after coming out of the intensive care unit, I went through all my mail and every letters and all that, and the police, I found a letter from the police saying that the case was closed, and they had the driver and let him go. And I wrote to the police on a couple of occasions, said it can't be closed, because if the driver was innocent, then that makes me guilty. So you better come and interview me. And they refused to come and do so. And on my wife's side of the family, that my wife was very much, she used to work, I met her working for an ex-CID man. So there's a lot of it's a very long story, but to answer your question, yeah, it was. I believe it wasn't an accident.
Right.
Have you ever kind of considered why somebody, if you're right, why somebody would do that, or had you done something recently that would cause anyone to do something quite as outlandish as that, Alan?
Well, it's strange because I come from this side of London and going over to the east side of London, and her family were, I don't think they really took to me. And I was set up by the News of the World once, on the front page of the News of the World with a couple of girls of the night. And that was a setup, the complete setup. I went to see Gordon Taylor about it. They got me a brief, and then nothing came of it. But it was a setup, and I think all that kind of led to what happened. I really do. I can't have it any other way, because while I was in hospital for a year, none of her family come and visit me. Of which I found I'd only been married for 6 months. So we were newlyweds, and none of her family come to visit me. So I found that a bit strange.
Right.
Yeah.
Not
even a bowl of fruit.
Right. Can we take you back to the beginning after all that? I mean, it was Tommy Docherty, your first manager, Alan?
Tommy signed me. My dad took me to Fulham when I was 13, and they said I was too small. So he walked me through the gates at Stamford Bridge one night, and they took me and my brother. And my brother was an apprentice there. He was 2 years older than me, John. And we both looked like we was going to sign, but John didn't quite sign pro. And Tommy Docherty left about 3 months before I was going to sign a professional. Right. He was sacked, and then Dave Sexton took over, and he'd never seen me play. But because we had two good coaches in Frank Blunston and Tommy Harmer, they recommended he sign me.
So Tommy didn't have any influence on your career, or?
Well, he did in the early days. He always said he signed me apprentice, and he could see me taking over from Venables. He always said that. Right. He had a young Terry Venables, and he said when he sold Venables, he had me in mind to replace him. But that didn't quite happen because he bought Charlie Cook to replace him. But Charlie was a different kind of player entirely.
That really was a great. Talk about entertainment. You didn't go down to Stamford Bridge and were bored, were you? It was.
Well, Neil, I must say that had Tommy Docherty not left Chelsea and Dave Sexton had came in and been coach, instead of sacking Docherty, if they'd just kept the two of them, if they'd have had Docherty in charge and Dave Sexton as coach, and not sold the likes of Terry Venables, George Graham to Arsenal, who went on to win the double, because the team before I got in the team was a terrific team with Bobby Tamblyn and Eddie McCready, Ken Shalito got injured. He missed the 66 World Cup. They had a fantastic team before. I thought that team were going to take over from Liverpool, but they split up when they all got caught in Blackpool, didn't they? He sent them all home and sent them home in Blackpool, and he split the team up. But I would love to have broke into the team, and George Graham would have been in the team, and Venables been in the team, and I was in the team, and young Osgood and Charlie Cook, and I think we would have won the only thing against us at Stamford Bridge was that dog track. If we hadn't have had the dog track, that was a hindrance.
Right. Lack of atmosphere, me.
Yeah. The likes of that's why I loved Highbury. I loved playing at White Hart Lane. These where you're close up to the crowd. I mean, that took a hell of a lot away from us.
Like Neil said, I love that Chelsea side. It was fantastic. It was entertainment, 100%. Can you just tell us a little bit about that maestro Charlie Cook, Alan, who's, as we all know, was a superb player?
Well, when Charlie first came down from Dundee, I don't think anyone at Chelsea, apart from the Jimmy Greaves of this world, I don't think they'd quite seen anything like Charlie. Charlie, I hadn't. What he could do with football was, and he had this incredible talent, The problem with Charlie had, was he never really had a position. As I say, when my position was a number 10 inside forward, but Charlie liked to get the ball out wide, and he used to tease fullbacks, and that was his position. But he wasn't a winger. He was he never had the great pace to get, like we bought Keith Weller, he would knock it by players and outrun them. Charlie liked to beat players standing still. He could just move his body and the whole crowd would move, He had this wonderful talent. But when he first came to Chelsea, it's very hard to say, but he must have been very, very close to George Best. He must have been on that same level as George. And, if he'd have been English, he wouldn't have got any caps. But because they don't pick the best players, do they? No. If he'd have been Brazilian, he'd have got 100 caps and won 3 World Cups. He was that good, Yeah. But that was a young Charlie Cook. But then he got mixed up with Tommy Baldwin, and they started to, light the King's Road up every night, and his form kind of dipped a little bit. And I think he still regrets that. I've spoke to him a few times, and he regrets how that went. The later side of his life.
I mean, you weren't that bad yourself, Alan, to be fair. Long flowing hair, the teenager who was going to do this, do that. How hard was it for you to sort of live up to that expectation, if you like?
Well, I see Charlie come down when I was 16, and I was apprentice. And I just thought, if that's a level, I see him in training one, I thought, if that's a level you got to play, you start to doubt yourself if you can reach that level. But in fact, it works the other way round. You work harder on your game. I was very fortunate that I had good technique. I just had to work harder at my fitness. And I think playing with Charlie helped me raise my game, because it was to actually get the ball and beat someone and play a 1-2 with Charlie, or give it to him and know you're never going to see it again. It was one of them, it was, but I don't think that nobody ever, if he played in the modern game with his Sky TV and, and they do these close-ups on people. I mean, the man was a total genius, incredible player.
Yeah, we obviously we lost Jimmy Greaves just recently, and a lot of the story about Jimmy was the 1966 World Cup and not getting in the side, having thought he would be in the final side, and Geoff Hurst obviously took his place when he was injured. I mean, you can relate to that, Alan, can't you? Because in 1970, I think I'm right in saying he played in every tie for Chelsea in the FA Cup, and then you got injured just before the final. That must have been a real heartbreaker for you.
Well, I was totally devastated, and Jimmy was on a different level to miss a World Cup final and the 2 or 3 games leading up to it. But I can always remember I never really got over missing the cup final until I come out my coma all them years later, and I thought, this makes that look nothing, so trivial. What have I been worried about all this time? But missing the FA Cup for me, the 2 games against Leeds, and then missing the Mexico World Cup, because I was in that, and you would know a certain Ken Jones at the Sunday Mirror. Ken Jones told me one day at Wembley that I would have been playing in Mexico. I'd have took some part, if not in first pick. And I said to him, Ken, thank you, but I didn't really want to hear that, It was because it was the greatest World Cup of all time, and that they stay with you, I can only think it's going to say. I mean, this case with the FA that I've got going on, they banned me for 3 years, and it led me to bad depression, and you start drinking for different reasons. And I believe that what happened to Jimmy in '66 led to him becoming an alcoholic.
Yeah,
I think because it's a devastating thing to happen, especially in them times. It's not like today when you, with Beckham and all this, you got all that money, you got other things to take your mind off it. But in them days, it was heartbreaking. And I've seen it many times. The '66, the final whistle goes, and everybody's jubilant, except Jimmy. He was crushed, and I was lucky enough to. Every time I ever see him, I asked him for his autograph. And he used to swear at me. He used to tell me to F off. I said, but you're my hero, Jim. I wear your number 8 shirt. And I used to love him so much. He was such a lovely man as well, And he was still my hero. Even, at nights out, I would make a beeline for him. And it was very sad. The other week was a very sad day.
Yeah, very.
Just going back to that FA Cup final, the replay at Old Trafford, etc. I don't think you celebrated, did you, afterwards, Alan? You didn't celebrate the victory. You felt a bit out of it. Is that true?
I did. I remember going down to the dressing room after, and I was just to say well done. And David Webb grabbed hold of me and grabbed me on the field. And but I left, and I got the late train home. I didn't even stay to celebrate. I couldn't celebrate. And then the following day, I was in a pub in the King's Road when the bus went by, the open top bus, and they were all on it. And I was in the pub with my family and my friends, and I was totally devastated, to get. I always say it's like when you're a little kid, the night before Christmas, you see Santa put you all the presents out, and you wake up in the morning and there's nothing there. And that's what it felt like. I felt empty, and it took me a long, long time to get over it.
You talk about being in a pub on the King's Road. Of course, in those days, professional footballers went out, didn't they? They want the kind of the curfews that there are now. They had fun, and in a sense, it was the city lights of Chelsea. There were great places to go to, and the temptations were enormous, Alan, weren't they? Was it? How did you kind of cope with those situations?
Well, it was easy for me because I only being born just along the road from the ground, and I knew most of the supporters anyway. And people don't. They laugh at me when I tell them. I said years ago when we used to play away, we used to come back on the train. There's the same train as all the supporters, and half an hour before we got to Euston Station, all the supporters would be in the same, coach as us, and we'd all be drinking beers together. So everybody knew each other. We were, they were like one big happy family, which wouldn't have happened, after that. But what happened at Chelsea was, for a team like we were, who like to go out and enjoy ourselves, we was the only club in the football league that never had a players' bar. So we'd be in the King's Road at we'd finish at 5:15, and by the time we'd had a shower, we'd be in the nearest pub at 5:15, just round the corner. So
brilliant.
It was unbelievable. So we'd be with the fans, and everybody knew everybody. It was just, and I think that couldn't happen today. But I think there's a certain element that is lacking.
Yeah, camaraderie between the fans and the players. Yeah,
absolutely. That element of training on a Friday morning in the forecourt, and the fans would be there, and the players putting themselves out to sign all the autographs. It's like one big happy family, really, and you get your just rewards by at Old Trafford in the replay. People up in Manchester have told me, they said they've never seen nothing, even Manchester United home games, they've never seen nothing like when Chelsea arrived against Leeds. They took over Manchester that night, and they're the rewards you get from the shed and them supporters, because they were that close, You
won't be able to get the last train back from Manchester now. I think the last train's about 8 o'clock. So.
Well, you know, we today we. I mean, I remember I was in Stoke about 6 or 7 years ago, and when they bought Michael Owen, and he used to come in training in his helicopter, so that we wouldn't have to worry about that, would we? If we were playing today, I'd be going to training in my helicopter.
Do you go to the bridge these days, Alan? I mean, you said just before we started the show that you live not far from the ground. Do you no?
I pass there about 3 days a week to go to Fulham to a local pub where I go, but no, I don't go to any matches. I don't get invited, or it's a great shame, really, because
I was going to say, isn't that a bit of a shame? Yeah. I mean, it doesn't.
Well, I tell you what, I miss more than anything. I miss seeing the former players. You know, I was never a Chelsea supporter. Even when I played for them, I loved the lads. As I say, going back to the Waddington thing, I was in love with the manager there and the fans. But as regards football clubs, I'm not a great lover of football clubs because they, and I believe once, it's a little bit. I look at it as like a marriage. I think once you get divorced, move on. You know. But I'm the local lad, but they've always seemed to give me the cold shoulder for some reason. And it wasn't me in 1974 that wanted to leave. Osgood and I didn't want to go, but they had to pay for that stand, and I kind of had to carry that with me. You know, I've always seemed to got the blame for leaving Chelsea.
What have you made of the Roman Abramovich era from afar, then, Alan? Obviously, the won the title, blah blah blah, won the Champions League. Has it been hard watching that, or how do you feel about that?
Well, as I say, I've never really been a Chelsea supporter, but I remember the day he took over. I remember it very well. I used to go down. I used to do a little bit of work when Ken Bates was there, because Ken Bates actually signed me the second time.
Right.
But I mean, he turned with his kind of money. You can't foul, can you? Really? But he's done it. He's done it in a. You can't knock their success, and they've had some most wonderful players, haven't they, through the years? You know, and they're second to nobody when it's come to talent. And I remember the time when under Bates, when they brought Ruud Gullit.
Yeah.
And probably the greatest talent they've ever had, you know. He played for Chelsea when he was finished, but he was just so far ahead of everybody else. It's just an amazing talent. But they had the money to bring them kind of players in.
Yeah, Zola wasn't bad either, was he?
Well, Zola was the fans' favourite, wasn't he? You know, but I think if Gullit had been there 5 years, he would have probably been voted the greatest player ever, Chelsea player. But he just come there at the end of his career. And I believe that if the story is true, that while he was at the bridge, his girlfriend had a baby, and Ken Bates offered him £1 million to sign the little kid.
The old rogue.
Well, I don't know whether it was a publicity stunt or whatever, but he actually offered. That was the way the story went, but just as well he didn't.
What sort of character was Ken Bates then? Was larger than life?
Well, he was. I suppose he's one of those you might say, you know, depending what side of bed he got out of. You know, he was. It wasn't my cup of tea. I can't really badmouth him, but I think he was in the game for all the wrong reasons. Let's put it that way. Once you've been at Stoke City with someone like Waddington, all he was interested in making Stoke City Football Club a better club, a better football club, and getting the best team that the fans have ever seen. Ken Bates kind of always threw in, I bought the club for £1, and he walked away with about 25 million. So that was his aim, and he got it.
Right.
I must say, Alan, you look at that Chelsea side now, the current one, and Mason Mount, who I think, if I dare say it, it's about the closest they've got to someone like you. He's got good talent on the ball, looks to play forward, sharp, incisive. Now he's in the England team, and Gareth Southgate would pick him every time if he could start with a blank sheet of paper. Mount would always be on it. Why do you think that you, the talent you were, only won 2 England caps?
Well, first of all, as I said, Ramsey banned me before I even had 1 cap. He banned me for 3 years, which is in the hands of the lawyers, obviously.
He banned you for what reason?
He banned me for the reason that I missed that cup final in Mexico with my bad ankle, and there was an under-23 tour, and I told Chelsea that I weren't going on the tour because I needed my rest on my ankle for out of season, and I needed treatment on it. And the next thing you know, I was told to come to the ground. Ramsey was calling, and he called me and he went, "If you're not at the airport tomorrow, you'll take the consequences." And I said, "Well, so be it." And I thought that I would get a slap on the wrist. And he banned me and Colin Todd for 3 years. And and I was even banned when I left Chelsea and joined Stoke. And it was only when Ramsey got the sack in '74, just after I left, that you might say out of the frying pan into the fire. The worst thing that could have happened was Don Revie got the job. And we all know who Don Revie didn't like, don't we?
Chelsea.
Yeah. Chelsea, full stop. You know, he didn't even, we once, while I was with Stoke, he once had a gathering of 80 players up in Manchester. And Peter Osgood weren't even one of those 80 players. And every time I would go out with Peter Osgood and we would meet new people, I would introduce Peter Osgood as the 81st best player in the country. And he would go mad. He would go mad. He would chase me. But I said, well, look, it proves it. You know, you're not in the 80. But that was how much he despised Peter Osgood and then me. And I didn't even play in the 70 final. But when Osgood scored that header, he must have played it every night, Revie, and used it as a dartboard. I don't know. But he never picked him in the 80. So that is, it's like everything in life, in every walk of life. If the manager don't like you, then you're not going to get picked. And if Waddington had been the England manager, I'd have probably got 120 caps. Jimmy Greenough, what a fantastic player. He never got any caps.
Extraordinary.
And that's because he started at Leeds with Revie in '60s. I see it's one of the games he played in an FA Cup semi-final against Chelsea in '67, when Tony Hateley scored the goal at Villa Park. Jimmy played that day for Leeds, and then he sold Jimmy to Birmingham. And then when he took over the England job, me and Jimmy Greenough, we must have been certainties to get in the England team at that time in 1975. Greenough was an incredible player. Not 1 cap. He just didn't like him, you know.
But there does appear to be a common theme here, Alan, that, you know, maverick players aren't trusted. You know, we spoke to one a few weeks ago, Rodney Marsh, that there's numerous others, Tony Curry, etc. And do you think that is continuing? Because there appears to be a big question mark over Jack Grealish, for instance, you know, with England.
Well, I said I did a piece with Jim White about 2 years ago, and I said it's just history really repeating itself, because Grealish is my favourite player. And I've said it for the last 2-3 years. It is history repeating itself, and I don't know if that's the right word, John, trusted. I think it is like most great players. There are those managers that can add, like a Ferguson, who loves great players. That's why he was so successful. We got the best players. He would tell them to go out and play. These managers and people like Southgate, they're lost when they can't tell anybody what to do. When you can't tell a player what to do, I think they get a little bit lost in it, and I think that's what happens. These modern day coaches are only happy when they can tell players what to do, where to go, and that's why our game becomes so robotic.
Yeah.
You know, and exactly what you said. You're obviously talking about the program, the Mavericks, when all those players, Frank, for instance, Frank Worthington.
Yeah.
Oh, I was at a Revy get together before I got my first cap, and maybe just after, and he pulled us all aside one by one. Stan Bowles was there, Tony Curry, and he says, "You're not in my plans for the future." Now that couldn't happen in Holland or Germany. Not your best players. You don't omit your best players, and that's what he did. You know, and we look at 1996 was probably our best team. Was Terry Venables was quite the opposite.
Yeah,
he picked our best players.
Well, he was able to handle Paul Gascoigne, wasn't he? Whereas, Bobby Robson did as well, but others might not have been able to.
I think Terry. Yeah, well, Terry. You know, it wasn't. I don't think it was a matter of even handling. You know, if you're a manager, that's all part of your job, isn't it? You know, I mean, when Waddington bought me, I was looked at as a troublemaker at Stamford Bridge. I caused all the trouble. He never had a day's problem with me because he could.
Yeah.
He treated me properly. He treated me like a human being. You can't talk down to people. You can't. You know, that's why the likes of Harry Redknapp done so well. Yeah. Harry's a player's player. You know, Harry would have been a good England manager because he would have picked the best players. I see what he did at West Ham. And when I was in hospital, I used to go to West Ham and see the likes of Paulo Di Canio. When you buy players like that, you know that you're a good manager. And no other manager would touch, after he pushed that referee over, nobody would touch him. But Harry did it, and I used to go to West Ham only just to watch Paulo Di Canio. He was fantastic. He was better than Zola. You know, they rave about Zola because Zola played in a top team at Chelsea, but Di Canio was better than that.
So do you fear a little bit for Jack Grealish then, Alan, moving forward with England? Because like you say, I mean, he's my favourite player as well, but he's definitely not the first pick, is he?
No. I felt, to be perfectly honest, a colleague of mine who's helping me with my case with the FA, it kind of brought it all back when Jack was left out. And I could see the hurt on his face, and I knew what Jack was going through, seeing inferior players put in front of him. And the Italian game was there to be won.
Yeah.
Jack could have murdered them. And God knows what he was going through on the line. You know, I knew how I felt. I knew how George Best felt when the World Cup come round every 4 years. He was the best player in the world, and he couldn't play on the big stage because he was Irish. He had to live with that. But had he been English, and you go back to Jimmy Greaves, he must have suffered something terrible on the line in 66. And Jack went through all them emotions in the Euros. If Jack Grealish would have played every game, we would have won the Euros standing on, with one hand behind the back. He's that good. But you don't get the best out of players by messing them around and treating them like that.
Well, it's interesting that Guardiola's obviously has been probed and got him, paid 100 million and plays him in every game. He alternates positions. He played him in a slightly different role at the weekend at Liverpool. You know, and this guy's regarded as one of the greatest coaches in the world. He loves Grealish. So
doesn't that tell you everything about the situation? You know, it's and the Premier League is a lot tougher to play in than the Euros that we've just seen. That was there to be won. You know, you got a lot more time on the ball, the pace a lot slower, but when you're playing against these teams that have got 10, 11 back, like Manchester City playing Chelsea when they just put a blanket across the back. Jack is, I believe that there's some players are great league players, and I always use Bobby Moore. He wasn't the greatest player in the world at club level, But once he put an England shirt on, he excelled himself. He was the greatest captain we've ever had.
He grew, didn't he? Yeah,
he came out. To see him walk out the tunnel in an England shirt with a ball in his hand, and his performance in Mexico in 1970 against the Brazilians was just the best I've ever seen. Against the best forward line of all time, maybe.
Yeah. Are you a big Paul Foden fan, Alan? I haven't seen him.
I am. I've got concerns about Foden, the same as I do young talking about young Mount. I think they're. I don't know if they've been. How can you have a go at Guardiola? It's the other night he was fabulous.
Yeah.
He's got it. He's definitely going to become one of the greats. But it's like Mount. He's got to start slowing himself, being a little bit more composed, because they're better players than what you're seeing. Everything seems to be 100 mile an hour. And Mount, at times I think this kid's going to have a heart attack. His energy is. I don't know where he gets it from, but if I was a manager, I'd have to pull him aside and say, you've got to slow down a bit, conserve your energy. And if you take him on, because he has the ability to go past people who plays. The problem he's had in the Chelsea team, he's had nobody really to play off. He hasn't had a great centre forward. If he had a great centre forward to play off, it would have been a different story. He plays, he's giving the ball to Werner, and Werner, I don't know.
You've got to give Werner credit for his effort, but he's missed a few, hasn't he? To be fair.
Well, I know a lot of people that I see every week that, given the money he's getting today, would put a lot of effort into it. I think he's very quick. I just don't think he's a finished article. But without being too critical, we watch the other players, don't we? Your Ronaldo's. I know he's a lot older and whatever, but at a young age, he misses. You can't miss that many chances, and it can't be a coincidence.
No,
I know. We shouldn't live in the past, but do you sometimes, Alan, watch the old big match revisited on the box? And I do, and watch those incredible matches, but on pitches that were absolutely bloody horrible. And you think the Premier League now, just the grass looks so wonderful. I bet you must think sometimes, oh my God, I'd love to go out and play on these pitches.
Well, it's a bit like watching Jimmy Whiten play, isn't it?
Like
sticker tables, isn't it? But going back to my bad ankle, it was they must have a nice cushion, these fields. But in my day, it's like the day I was talking to Terry Conroy the other day, and it's quite well known. We played 3 games over the Easter period in '75, 2 in London and the Easter Monday back in Victoria Ground against Liverpool. And I said to Tony on the train going back on Saturday, I couldn't play because the grounds were too hard. We were going through a bad phase where it had no rain or nothing like that. And he said, well, just don't go out tonight and don't go down your local on Sunday. He said, and come in Monday for the game. That's 3 games in 4 days. And I got in the Monday. I did what he said and walked in, and he had the pitch flooded for me. He had the Stoke-on-Trent Fire Brigade flood the pitch for me because it was the top of the league clash, and he wanted me to play. And I said, Tony, I just can't play on hard grounds, on these hard grounds. I can't play 3 games in 4 days on hard grounds. It was like playing on the motorway. And he said, no, I've heard there's going to be rain. I said, there's going to be no rain. And I didn't realise that Tony wanted to do a rain dance. But that's the kind of manager he was.
Brilliant.
And then you go out and you say, well, how can I not play for this bloke?
Yeah.
I was so disappointed when I got to the Victoria Ground, knowing I wasn't playing, and they were playing Liverpool, and I had to sit for agonising through 90 minutes and watch Liverpool tear us apart and not be able to do anything. And then all of a sudden I walked in, and within 5 minutes I walked through the tunnel and I see Keegan and Toshak and Clements walk up from the pitch with mud on their shoes, and they said, "What's going on here?" You know, and that was all down. That was all down to the manager. So, you know, that is why you love the man so much, I suppose.
Have you set foot in the Bet365 stadium, Alan?
I have. I was there the other week. Yeah.
All right. What do you reckon about Stoke this season?
I was very impressed against West Brom the other night, I must say. I didn't think they had much chance, but it's a league. I think it's possibly the best chance to get out of this league at the moment. It's not a great. That's the toughest league in the world, the Championship.
Yeah.
But I think this year there's a great chance. When West Brom are top, and you watch West Brom, they're not really that great, I don't think. Stoke were very, very good against them on Friday night. If Stoke and the manager, they got a decent manager.
Yeah.
I think they could do all right. But the Britannia Stadium is no Victoria ground.
No.
We miss those old places, don't we? I mean, when you went back to Stoke, I know that Tony wasn't there, and he played for, I think it was Bill Asprey, wasn't it, who'd come in and replaced Richie Barker.
Yeah.
Slightly different characters, but you know, you still had some pretty great memories of your last spell, should we say, at the Victoria Ground, Alan.
Well, that's a lot of people don't know that Bill Asprey was manager, but Tony got me back.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Tony was because Bill Asprey played under Tony, and he done all the. Tony was the one that called me and said, "Why don't I was at Chelsea at the time? I was playing in the reserves, and he said, "How would you like to come up? Just come up for a month's loan." I think he missed me as a drinking partner. So I said, yes, I'll come up for a month. And they were 13, 14 points adrift at bottom of the league. And that was when it was 2 points. And we won 3 of them 4 games in my loan. And we closed the gap a little bit. And they offered me a contract.
All right.
Right.
That's Chelsea.
Yeah. Don Revy.
And so that period, you say, so you closed
Julian,
the gap.
call you back in 5. All right.
The perils of live broadcasts. So you slowly closed the gap. You pulled up at Stoke. Yeah.
We took it to the last. We were 14 points adrift, and then that was from the second bottom team, and we went to the last game of the season and got out of the last game of the season. We beat Wolves 4-0, and we got out of trouble. It was the Mission Impossible. You know, it was like I was like what's his name who just made the film?
Tom Cruise.
Yeah, I should have been Tom Cruise, but it was unbelievable how we got out of trouble. But I'd never walked back into a dressing room, and you know, it was a dressing room I'd left a good side behind, and I've walked in and I'd never seen such a dejected. And they had 7 internationals in their team, Stoke.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You know, likes of Brendan O'Callaghan, Sammy McElroy, Mark Chamberlain, Robbie James, George Berry. They had 7 internationals in their team, and they were 14 points adrift. Now that tells you something wrong with the management. And Tony said, "Come back," and they just need a lift. And all I did was tell the goalkeeper stop kicking, Peter Fox, to stop kicking the ball up the field, and throw it out, and then we'll play out. I said, it's not working. Your way is not working. And the first day on the Friday in training, Sammy McElroy, I changed next to Sammy. He was a great player, Sammy, and he said, first time I've enjoyed kicking a ball again for so long. I said, well, that's how we're going to play tomorrow. We beat Arsenal in our first game at the Victoria Ground, and we won 3 out of them 4 games, and we never looked back.
Brilliant.
We beat Liverpool again, and we beat Liverpool again on the Easter Monday, and that was the biggest victory. That kept us up because that gave us final belief to go on and stay up. And Liverpool won the league. I think we got more points from that January to May than any other team in the league, which was quite something.
You spent a number of years in America, Alan. Can you talk a little bit about that? You must obviously enjoyed it out there.
Oh, it was a dream, really, because I'd walked out on Arsenal. I wouldn't go back in. I was out of the game for 6 months, and I was just training on my own. And I was at the bridge one day, and I was working in. I was in a box. I was running a box there. My mates were in there. My friend, I used to be very good friends with Dennis Waterman, you know, the minder.
Yeah.
And he was in the box with me and a couple of other friends. And I walked out to go to the gents' bathroom, and I bumped into Bobby Moore. And I said to Bobby, "Come in and have a drink in the box." And he came in the box after the game and asked me what I was doing. And I said, "I'm not going back, Bob." He said, "You're 27 now." He said, "Go and speak to Jimmy Gabriel. He's in the restaurant." He said, "I've been to Seattle." He said, "You'll love it there." So I went out to see Jimmy. I met Jimmy on the Monday in a hotel in West London, and I signed for Seattle, and it was the best. It was a dream. It was a dream. I loved America. I love the American way of life. I love Seattle, and captained them for 4 great years. I had 4 great years, and then it happened again. You know, the roof didn't fall off, but they changed the owners, and I was on too much money. They couldn't pay me. But I loved my time there. I mean, I played against Cruyff over there 3 times. I played against Beckenbauer over there 3 times. I played against one of the greatest players, Bogacivic at New York Cosmos, Giorgio Chinaglia. You know, all these players. There was so many wonderful players over there. You know, it was. I'd never ever wanted to come home.
How did you match up against those superstars, Alan? I bet you were as good as them.
Well, they were a little bit older than me. That was, but I found out that Cruyff was. I thought George was before I got there, but Cruyff was the best player I'd ever been on the football field with. He was just an incredible player. He was on a different level. He was on a different plane. He was just so good even then. I played against him. He played for Los Angeles Aztecs, and he played for Washington Diplomats. And I know he used to live in Washington. I think he even went to the White House. The White House used to call him and ask him to go up and have a cup of tea. He was that good, you know.
Yeah.
But and you see what he done at Barcelona. But it was to be on the field of him, you know. It's scary, really, because you know you forgot for a split second. You forgot you were playing because you wanted to watch him. You know, he had this just a wonderful ability. You know, he never. I played against him when I was 18. In the first season in the game, I played against Pele, George Best, and Johan Cruyff.
Not bad.
Chelsea played Santos in Jamaica at the end of 1970, and Pele played. I played against George, obviously against the likes of Bobby Moore, and Johan Cruyff. Chelsea played Ajax at the end of that season as well. And I thought I tell the story, and people laugh at me. The night before, we were coming back from France, and we dropped into Amsterdam to play this team no one had really heard of in 1970. You know, all the jokes were coming out. They were cleaning products and all this. And I never forget, we was out the night before the game. We come across Heineken, which was quite new, and we was in this bar drinking away. And then we go out and play against this team. And this fella's walked out with number 14 on his back. And I thought, well, he can't be any good because he's sub. He's one of the subs. Anyway, he made that number his own, didn't he? It was amazing. And right, when someone's asked me before, how long into the game did it take for you? I said straight away. Straight away. He got the ball, and for 90 minutes, he tore us to pieces. It was unbelievable. And then when I played against him in the States years later, I realised it was no fluke. I'd seen him on TV, but it's, you could be in the ground or you could watch it on TV, but there's nothing like being on the field with them, and then and he was just incredible.
He liked the odd cigarette as well, didn't he?
Well, that killed him in the end, didn't it? I believe.
Sadly, yeah.
Yeah, which was a great shame. Because he was, I've heard stories, he was such a wonderful man as well,
Yeah.
And he had that thing that I've always found about. I know a lot of great people in football and film stars in music, likes of Phil Collins. And I find the greater they are at what they do, the greater person they are, the nicer person they are, the modesty and so humble, and and I believe Anne was like that. George Best, you couldn't come across a nicer fella.
Yeah.
He was just so, there's no, and yet you've got these superstars, so-called superstars today, who I'll see him walk on the field and I think, who do you think you are? And they couldn't tie your boots up.
You had some film stars, etc., come to Chelsea, didn't you, during that golden age? It was known as a sort of hangout for the superstars, wasn't it, of the screen and music?
I was there one night before I got in the first team, and I was with my mother, who was upstairs having a cup of tea, and Sean Connery walked in. Now, I don't know what year he got his first James Bond part. It's got to be was it around then?
Mid-60s, wasn't it?
Yeah, 66, 67, something like that.
Well, this must have been just when he made his first James Bond film, and he was there. But after that, David Webb, I got very friendly with Michael Crawford, who was some mothers at that time, who went over to do what he'd done in America. He was a great fella, another great fella. But if you walked along the bar in the East Stand when you wasn't playing, if you was injured or whatever, you weren't playing, and there was faces everywhere. Nobody went to any other ground. Who wants to go to North London anyway? It was the King's Road, wasn't it?
It was the King's Road,
and Stamford Bridge was a place to be seen. And I remember we finished the game one day, and Richard Attenborough, Dickie Darling, we had a falling out with him, but his son was married to Jane Seymour.
Right.
Yeah.
The lovely Jane Seymour.
Yeah.
And we took her round to the little pub round the back here, called the Red Anchor. Then it's called the Sporting Pace now. And she was there, and I said, "Come on, come round the pub with us." And we walked in the pub, 3 or 4 of the players and a couple of my pals, with Jane Seymour. And she was, she was a Bond girl, wasn't she? And
stunning.
It was just unbelievable, though. And it was just, she was, as I say about these people, these stars, she was just the most wonderful girl. I see her up the King's Road after that and waving. They're such nice people, And it's great that they get on to such stardom, and they're such lovely people. But they would be in the pub after the game with you, And it's you can't even think about it today, can you?
Great days, Alan. Great days.
They were.
Alan,
very special.
The hour has actually flown by, would you believe? And
Alan, it's been an absolute pleasure.
We've really loved it, and it's great to see you. And we haven't delved into your FA scenario, but best of luck with that. I mean, you deserve all that you can get.
Thank you.
Let's hope it works out for you. Have a great night back at Stoke.
Yeah. Where are you? Where are you on the Friday night? Where are you appearing?
We're in one of the theatres there. Terry Conroy's fixed it all up. I think it's about 150 people there.
Is it Victoria Hall?
No, it's a new venue.
Saw Jeff Rotel there last week.
Oh, did you really?
Who did he play for?
Living in the past.
Yeah. Well, when I first went to Stoke, that was there used to be the Place nightclub, and that was where they had they all played there. You know, Rod Stewart, Elton John, the lot. There's a great. It used to be the most fantastic place, Stoke.
Brilliant.
It's very, very sad now. It's not the place it was. The politicians once again have wrecked something else.
Yeah, like many places, Alan, I'm afraid.
Yes.
But it's been great fun, Alan, and terrific to see you. And hopefully we'll see you soon. And give our love to Mr. Conroy when you see him on Friday.
I will. I'll say hello. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thanks, Alan.
Cheers.
Thanks, Alan.
You're very welcome.
So thanks to Alan for a brilliant hour. And that's it for this week. The show was produced and edited by Sam Sethi.
Come back to the Old Spice Boys next time. Follow us in your podcast app. And we're online at www.oldspiceboys.football. We'll catch you again soon.
Good luck, men.
Thanks, Alan.
All the best.
Cheers, mate. Cheers.